Kira's making a tasty breakfast.
Nice.
I'm good. Okay, so you were just talking about the idea of acknowledging, the ability to acknowledge things and let them go as being a hallmark of focus or a hallmark of control or stability within a lucid dream. But I think that's obviously also true for meditation, right? Because like that meditation and dreaming are, we could say, very similar or the same in nature, right? The balance that you cultivate in a lucid dream or in meditation is the same as the balance that is required to hold yourself in a lucid dream, right? Or to navigate or to be there, to stay there, right?
Sure.
So yeah, could you talk about that a little bit? Because you were saying that like confusion in some ways, or that unconscious thought process that we have during meditation, or a regular dream, a confusing regular dream, is like in some ways more familiar to us, is more comfortable for us than clarity.
Right.
But that seems so weird, because
Most
if
people
you
want to
ask
be
somebody,
clear.
do you want to be confused or do you want to be in this clear state? So
Of course they're going to say clear, but it's, in the beginning, it's like, what's the most familiar? Familiar is something that's consistent for you, has been consistent for a very long time. So again, even though clarity may be something that's reached for and you're trying to get that, it's like the confusion is actually easier to obtain, and in some ways, by some part of you, more comfortable, right? Because it's familiar. You're used to that. You're used to being distracted by every little thing. You're used to, not being sure what's happening, right? It's like a lot of people feel that way in everyday life all the time, right? So, the idea is that, when we look at that, and we look at it from the standpoint of a control in a lucid dream, I mean, there's a synonymous nature there, right? Like in a lucid dream, one of the things about control is not being able to acknowledge something and let it go. So how do you develop that skill? We develop it from, those early, one of the first meditations that we learn to do, or at least to start in the ability to know ourselves, right, is to sit quietly and just view any thoughts that come to our minds, right? It's like, without any agenda other than observing your thoughts. And it can give us insight about who we are. Again, to know yourself is probably the very best way for you to proceed with any esoteric training, any spiritual training. It doesn't matter what it is. Knowing yourself is paramount among all other things. And so, but in a lucid dream, right, it's really easy to get sucked into a regular dream, right, which is usually more confusing, and it doesn't seem like it's very coherent, and jumps from one scene to another, and you're sort of in a foggy state, and you're experiencing it, then you're watching it, then you're taking all these perspectives all at once, and it becomes very confusing, right? There's no direction. You're sort of sucked into the scenario like you are in the waking dream, right, where you feel like the environment is happening to you rather than you having some control over that, or that you're projecting it into that space and experiencing it that way. So, any little distraction in a lucid dream can, if you focus on it long enough, will have the tendency to pull you into a regular dream, right? Because again, that's part of your mind, your conscious mind, that's saying like, being confused is maybe not as comfortable, but it's comfortable in the fact that it's more familiar, right? It's not the unknown. Like clarity for most of us, is the unknown. It's strange, right? To have super clarity about something, it's like, that's when you have those epiphanies, right? It's like those aha moments. And although we revel in them, it's like, they're so strange, we think of them as peak experiences, right? So,
And do you think that part of that is that when clarity produces such a, let's say, exquisite or deeper awareness of our own scenarios or our own life situations or ourselves, that usually leads to a change of some kind, because when we see things more clearly,
you see your role in those scenes more clearly too, right? So you see the world in a more clear way, and you see your place in the world in a more clear way.
do you see your own responsibility for those, for every situation and experience
Absolutely.
in a different way as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that can be,
Adds to the clarity, right? It's like, it's not, there's no more victimhood, right? It's like, your role in all of these things without anybody being, a tyrant or a judge over you. It's literally just, you're observing it, and then you know it to be true because the clarity is there. There's no debate about it. It's that type of clarity that becomes, enlightening, right? Because it sheds the light on it. There's no corners in the room that are dark. It's like you see all those aspects for what they are truly. And once you do that, you can let them go, right? Because you've acquired that as experiential knowledge, not something that you have to debate or guess about anymore. You don't have to defend it anymore, right? All of those things just take energy away from you, right? So, and even when you're doing that within yourself, which, is very common again, it's no wonder you're tired all day long. No wonder you're tired at the end of the day. By the time you hit 35 or 40, holy shit, it's like you're exhausted by the end of the day, no matter what your job is, no matter what you do. And I would say that most of that is from these internal debates that are going on all the time. One side is the hero, one side is the victim, one side is the perpetrator, one side, and they're all you, and they're all fighting to give you, to try to, stamp, the scenario that is correct into your, into your mind. So if if the victim wins out, it's like the world is just putting everything on you, right? If the hero wins out, it's like you're making your way in the world, and everything else is just a trial that you have to get through, like Hercules, So, and all these other things. If you're the perpetrator, it's like you're trying to figure out, you always have a reason why you've done certain things or whatever it is, whether it's justified or not, right? So it's like, but all of those conflicts that are going on within you, they take energy, right? They take a lot of energy to sort of work through that all the time. I mean, think about any time, let's say even as a child, or where we usually have a ton of energy. That's Zuzu eating her breakfast, right? I told you, she's the one that's she's the head of the household, really. It's like, she's like, oh, they're trying to do something, and I'm just gonna add my 2 cents in here.
We've got important work to do, Zuzu.
Important work to do. Yeah, well, it's no more important than me eating breakfast, okay? All right, Dustin, get a grip. So that's it. It's like this is the experience of real life, of implementing or putting your practice in your everyday existence. If you always have to be pulled away and put in a silent room and meditational music going on and all these things, if that's what you need to actually be immersed in your spirituality, it's like you're not going to be immersed very long, right? Because how many people can do that all day long? It's insanity, right? It's like those are nice little breaks. Those are little plateaus that we get to experience if we carve them out in our day, which is highly recommended, but it's not essential. The essential part is, how do I bring that into my everyday existence and really not let it pull me into some kind of confused dream, right? Where it's like I have these conflicts going back and forth of like, oh, the dog's eating and people are going to hear that, and we're trying to film something kind of serious or whatever it is, something to help people. It's like, yeah, but if you're looking for the perfect scenario, I mean, it's so artificial to sort of establish that, right? It's like, it's just, and if you're waiting for those things, it's going to be at the same frequency as trying to carve out these, exquisite plateaus of peacefulness in your day, right? It's like, those are just little plateaus. Those are little respites in the day. And the rest of the day is, at this point, your reality, right? How do you just integrate it and not let it distract you from the purpose at hand? So, and that's it. But, so I think that, again, likening that, distraction in our normal everyday existence and the distraction that happens in a lucid dream, and how that would bring you more into this confused state if you focus on that. Because what we focus on, we bring into more attention. We bring our awareness is opened up and attached to more of that. So if I get all freaked out about the dog eating out of her bowl, then all of my attention goes there, and none of it goes toward, a very small amount goes back toward what we're talking about. So it's like, no, you've got to just acknowledge it and you let it go, right? You acknowledge it as a thing and you let it go, and you bring it back, bring your awareness back to what it is that you're talking about.
So would you say that, like, on one level, one of the first practices for lucid dreaming is cultivating that technique of observation?
I think it's the first practice for any type of
it's funny. It's
esoteric
like
practice.
One of the first things we did in the 42 days. It's a part of the Seeing program, and obviously it's going to be the first technique for this program as well.
And, again, I mean, if we want to, really bring it back to basics, you want to state
what you're
doing, right? What do you want for an end result? You want to have, control of your mind, control of your thoughts. You want to know yourself in all aspects, because one of the things that we do when we see that, right, when we go back and you'll journal a little bit, write it down so you can't forget it, right? And you can't augment it to the point where it's, it's a fantasy again, like it's what you want and not what you actually have.
Yeah.
And so, so the thing would be, once I write that down, we start to see patterns, right? Patterns emerge when you observe your thoughts without judgment, right? Which is really important in that exercise, right? We observe without judgment. We look at them and we just observe them and we let them go. They pop up, we let them go. Pop up, let them go. You acknowledge them, let them go, right? We're not pushing them away, because that effort of pushing them is going to cause them to be stronger and be more cause us to attach to that distraction more and make it bigger than it actually is, right? So it's you acknowledge it and then you just let it go, and another one will take its place. But after a while, when we write those down, we train ourselves to remember them, right? And you'll start to see patterns that, like, maybe half your thoughts are about your financial situation, or maybe half your thoughts are about your relationships or aspects of your relationship. Maybe a third of your thoughts are about your career, or how you're going to change your situation, or whatever it is. We find these patterns that come up, right? And some of them are what I would call around your normal waking environment, but some of them are a little deeper too. Like some of them are pretty horrific, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? Things that you're entertaining, as far as complete thoughts that come into your mind that could be quite horrific, and you acknowledge them and you let them go. But it's not like you don't write those down, because you wouldn't want anybody to know. Nobody reads your journal except you, if you're smart. So it's just to really isolate those things and be able to look at them in the context of everything else that you're doing, right? So, and if you deny them, you're feeding them, because even denial is feeding it power, right? So it's like, and it makes it stronger. and you're just letting that monster grow and grow and grow. At first it's just a little gremlin, and then, if you don't squash it right away, or you don't know, it becomes this mammoth, right? And so, it makes it seem even harder to dismantle, to deflect, to, put it in its right position in your life, right? We're not denying that it ever happened. We're just using it we're transitioning it into a strength rather than something that's constantly draining us of our energy, right? So, and when you regain all of that energy that's not being diverted into those, running away from those monsters, right? Or hiding or denying that they're there, you've got all the energy. You're not going to be exhausted at the end of the day. You're going to be enlivened at the end of the day and in the beginning of the day when you wake up, because, you're really making progress toward the goals that you've set up for your life. That's a huge thing. That's a big deal. So, yeah.
So the first technique for lucid dreaming is observation, then.
Observation.
And practicing that, cultivating that ability to acknowledge and let them.
Knowing yourself, observation of your own thought patterns, observation of your own thoughts, all of those things. And the patterns won't be obvious to you in the beginning. The patterns will come, as you write them down and review your notes.
Right.
In hindsight, right? Hindsight's 2020. We start to see the patterns emerge as you write those simple things down.
Sounds similar to writing down your dreams.
Very similar, and those two things go together when we start the lucid dreaming process, right? It's those are two practices in the waking that, in the waking dream that, we use to show the subconscious that we're serious about this and that we're serious about learning more about dreaming and using it to better our lives. So when you have something that you're constantly, putting more effort into, more concentration on, more thought process on, it's just like if you want to start a business, you need to learn about finance for the most part, right? So it's like the more that you do that, the more that you concentrate on that, learn certain accounting procedures and all of these things and how banking works and all, money stops being so elusive, right? It becomes something that, is just, you see it as a tool to be manipulated, right? And how it works and how you can use it as a tool rather than something that's almost got a, deity status, right? Like, oh, it's money, it's like, no, it's just a tool. When you treat it that way, when you treat the processes around it that way, it just becomes more accessible to you, right? Because you don't see it, you're not putting it in something that's, something that's that has more value than it really has, right? It's just another tool. It's nothing else. It's nothing more than that. But by putting more energy into the understanding it on all different levels, it makes it more available to you. So the same thing happens with, dreaming, knowing your thoughts, knowing yourself, knowing the patterns of thought that you have over the course of weeks or months or whatever it is, and writing down, being able to remember, fragments of your dreams. If you don't remember anything about your dreams, remembering fragments of the dreams, it might even be a smell or a color or whatever it is, just some glimpse of it, and learning to retrieve those and putting more and more, let's say, percentage points of thought into remembering your dreams, making it more and more important. Then the subconscious goes, finally, you tip the balance, right? Where it was nothing before and you're not remembering anything, or once in a blue moon, now you're putting so much attention on it that, it's bringing you better and better glimpses of it. You're getting more and more dreams and perhaps even multiple dreams a night that you can record. And, you're telling your subconscious that this is important for our progress. And so, and it complies by giving you more of the information that you want, right? In more clarity, more detail. That's the idea. So it's important.
So with the observation technique, doing the observation of your mind,
thoughts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What would be your like practice recommendation for doing that? I mean, because we talk about the technique as a whole, and general theories about that, and
Sure.
how that integrates with dreaming. But like,
Yep.
how
How do you actually do it? What's the
well, we
step-by-step
know,
process for
yeah,
doing it?
yeah, and how what's
Time-wise and all of that, all the little details of how to do that. Yeah. So first, I mean, it's quite simple, really. I mean, first, set your goals, which is to understand yourself at a deeper level. And then you're going to do that by observing your own thoughts, observing your own mind. And so without judgment, which is important, right? So you're going to sit and usually I do most of these meditation exercises in a sitting position, back straight, shoulders relaxed. I relax my body as much as possible, go through a basic relaxation, and then, it might take a couple minutes, and then I'm going to, at that point, close my eyes, if I haven't done that already. Just trying to give you as many point-by-points as I can. And then I just, through breathing, breathing gently in and out, it doesn't have to be anything regulated, right? Breathing gently in and out, I'm just observing my thoughts. That's all I'm doing. I'm just, thoughts will come up, I acknowledge them, and I let them go. Again, I'm not pushing them, not trying to keep them from coming. I'm just acknowledging them and letting them go. Then the same. Another one will take its place. Believe me, there'll be multiple ones vying for that spot. So immediately something else will take its place. And, I go from there and acknowledge it, let it go. And I'll do that. I'll set a little alarm on my phone or watch or whatever timer I have in there. And, I would say start with 5 minutes, 5 minutes of that observation. So if you add in 2 minutes for relaxation and maybe a minute just to sort of get comfortable, the whole thing may take you 8 minutes to do, somewhere between, 8 and 10 minutes, let's say. But 5 minutes is, perfectly fine and a really good start, right? You want to be able to go from 5 minutes, and let's say when 5 minutes when you come out of it, like, you're questioning, was that really 5 minutes because it felt way too short? That's the time to bump up your time. So that's a good indicator that you're getting into a much deeper state perceptually, and in a let's say a deeper trance-like state, and so that means that your brain waves are sort of moving more or into a deeper level of alpha, right, where things are a little bit more open. And you're able to observe more clearly what's going on. So, and then I would bump it up, maybe like, don't do too much at once, don't go from 5 to 10, maybe do 7, and then if that seems still short, well, you're in a good zone, then move it up to 10 or 12, right? And so you want to bring it up to the point where you can do 30 minutes of that. That would be the max, what I feel is the max point. After that, it's it becomes a negative return on your investment, right? So like past that point, it really doesn't serve any purpose. So, but up to 30 minutes, you're going to, your return on that is going to be great. So,
and is one of the goals for that not just the ability to let go, acknowledge and let go of thoughts, but also like not get like drawn into them and lose your, let's say your awareness of them as they arise?
Yeah, I mean that's the idea, right? It's not that you're trying to hide from them or anything else, right? Or dissipate them in any way, right? I just want to observe them.
But you're also trying not to lose consciousness, right?
Yeah, just like the dreaming, right? I don't want to get sucked into that. Right. Like, oh, I have to, one of my thoughts, I have to balance my checkbook. And then it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, instead of letting it go, it's like,
you're in like,
I'm in balancing my checkbook.
You're in a dream or in your head about balancing your checkbook.
And then I'm like, yeah, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and then I've got to go to the bank, and here's the scenario that will happen after that. And, and you start letting it cascade into some scenario that hasn't even taken place yet, but You're just projecting that could be a scenario. And so you get sucked into those things that are anxiety provoking or just literally could just be distracting, right? So the idea is that you can acknowledge that, observe it, and then let it go. And
Right.
then you're back on track. So
Right.
yeah. So that's
Cool.
that's how that works. And up to 30 minutes as but it may take you several months to get to that place where you're comfortable enough doing it for that long.
Yeah.
Right. But you'll get a lot of play out of that. Right. So it's good. And make sure you write down your observations, what you realize. That's going to be a big deal, and look back week from week. Like, you don't have to look back month to month. I mean, you can if you want, but first it's just week to week, right? Look back in your journal week to week and see if you see patterns emerging, right? Is it all about career or financials? Is it all about relationships, or a majority of it? You want to see, what's holding sway in your mind, what's capturing your attention, your awareness the most, because that'll give you clues about, what's important in your life and what's distracting and what do you need to deal with in order to make it better, right? It gives you great direction that way.
And all of this is going to help us with the dreaming.
Absolutely, because it's just, you're using your waking consciousness as you would in a lucid dream to keep you focused on what's important, what you want to deal with, not letting the dream pull, suck you into some other distracting, confusing episode that you feel like you're just there observing. You have nothing to do with it. You're just, the dream is being put on you.
Right.
Just like your life is being put on you, that you have nothing, you're just sort of like trying to keep your head above water, right? It's like, no, that's not the case. So it's a good way to sort of have that realization and then, use that to boost you into doing the things that are going to promote the life that you want, rather than thinking that you're just trapped in a life that is, sort of independent from you and you're just a player in it. That's not the case. But you have to prove yourself. You have to prove that to yourself. And this is a good way to start that.
All right. Yeah.
Beep, beep. See, these are all the things that keep testing us until we get the lesson. Excuse me.
Right. It's me, man. The beeping, Zuzu walking around. It's my perfectionism.
I hear ya. It's like, that's the deal, right? It's like... That's it. We shall see if it works.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a plumber or a heating specialist or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just a guy trying to survive. trying to embrace my life experience such as it is.